What if the memory you keep replaying in your mind is not trying to protect you, but is actually the very thing keeping you trapped? Have you ever noticed how an unfair moment can echo in your mind long after the event has passed? You lie awake in the dark, rewriting the script. You think of the perfect response, the exact words that would finally make them understand, the ultimate way to balance the scales. You feel the sting of the injustice all over again, alongside a burning need to make it right. It feels deeply unresolved. It feels like an open wound that refuses to heal until someone acknowledges the pain they caused. But here is the truth few people want to face. The person who hurt you has likely moved on, while you are still carrying the weight of that exact moment. Most of your suffering right now is not caused by what happened. It is caused by how tightly you are holding onto it, waiting for an apology or a resolution that may never come. If you have ever felt stuck, emotionally exhausted, or entirely consumed by a situation that was completely unfair, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. 1. The heavy burden of the unresolved. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound concept about human pain, often called the parable of the two arrows. In life, we cannot avoid the first arrow. The first arrow is the event itself, the unfairness, the betrayal, the disrespect, the harsh words. That arrow strikes us, and it truly hurts. We have no control over the first arrow, but the second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. It is the endless replaying of the event. It is the anger, the rumination, and the desperate demand for a different outcome. Buddhism reminds us that our deepest suffering comes from the second arrow. It comes from our attachment to how things should have been, rather than accepting what is. Imagine walking along a beautiful, quiet forest path. Suddenly, a stranger walks past and forcefully shoves a heavy, rough stone into your hands. It is entirely unfair. You did not ask for the stone. You did not deserve it. But instead of setting it down in the dirt, you grip it tightly and carry it with you for miles. You walk through rivers, climb steep hills, and try to rest, all while clutching this heavy stone, secretly hoping the stranger will return. See your struggle and take it back. Your arms ache. Your spirit is exhausted. Think about your own life. How long have you been carrying the stone of this unfair moment? You carry it to your work. You carry it into your quiet mornings. You let the ghost of someone else's poor behavior ruin your present peace. You believe that by holding on to the anger, you are somehow holding them accountable. But the truth is, you are only exhausting yourself. Ask yourself, what are you afraid will happen if you let go? Are you afraid that letting go means they win? Pause, breathe, observe the thought without following it. Feel the weight of the stone in your hands and realize you have the power to open your fingers. You do not have to fix the past right now. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You are holding on to the memory because you believe holding on will eventually bring justice. But peace is not found by holding on to the heavy things. It is found by making space. And this is where the next truth begins. Because the deep, burning desire to see them pay for what they did is not a shield. It is a trap. 2. The illusion of justice and the trap of revenge. What if the justice you are seeking is the very thing holding you hostage? Here is the truth. When someone treats us unfairly, our deepest instinct is to fight back. We want the scales to balance. We imagine scenarios where they suddenly realize their terrible mistake, where they feel the exact same sharp pain they caused us. You might catch yourself staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, daydreaming about their downfall. You plan the perfect, stinging remark that will finally put them in their place. You want them to suffer just a little so they understand. It feels like strength. It feels like standing up for yourself. But think about that. You are spending your precious time, your energy, your thoughts, your quiet moments focusing entirely on the person who wronged you. Waiting for revenge keeps you chained to the very person you wish to escape. In Buddhist thought, there is a profound understanding of cause and effect. We often misunderstand karma as a cosmic system of revenge, a tool of divine punishment. But Buddhism reminds us that karma is simply the natural law of action and consequence. Our job is not to administer justice. When you scheme for revenge or harbor deep, quiet resentment, you are planting seeds of suffering in your own mind. Attachment to anger is still an attachment, and any attachment causes suffering. Imagine a bird that has been captured and placed in a small, cold cage. It sits inside for a long time, hurt and angry at the captor. One day, a strong wind blows the door of the cage completely open. Freedom is right there. The sky is vast, clear, and waiting. But instead of flying out, the bird refuses to leave until the captor comes back to apologize. The bird sits fiercely on its perch, furious, watching the open door, demanding justice. The captor never returns. The bird remains a prisoner, not because the door is locked, but because its own anger keeps it from flying away. How often do we sit in the open cage of our own lives? You might be completely separated from a harsh workplace. You might be far away from a past relationship that drained you. The painful argument with a family member is over. You are no longer in the room where you were ignored or belittled. The event is finished. The door is open. You could walk out, focus on your own peace, and enjoy your quiet evening. Yet you lose sleep replaying their cruel words. You obsess over their actions, secretly hoping to see them fail. Your mind stays locked in the cage, demanding that life punish them. Ask yourself, are you refusing to fly because you are waiting for an apology? Is the desire to see them suffer actually bringing you any peace, or is it feeding your own exhaustion? Pause. Breathe. Stop trying to force the universe to settle the score right now. Acknowledge the unfairness. It was unjust. It was wrong. But do not let their wrong action dictate your current state of mind. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You are entirely free to walk away without having the last word. You do not have to prove them wrong to prove your own worth. But stepping out of the cage requires understanding what this anger is actually doing to your spirit. And this is where the next truth begins, because the poison we wish upon others rarely reaches them. 3. Drinking the poison. What if the anger you feel is destroying your own peace, while the person who hurt you feels nothing at all? Here is a truth that is difficult to swallow. You wake up feeling heavy. You go through your day, but a low-level irritation hums beneath the surface. You feel agitated. You snap at people who love you. Why? Because you are harboring a deep resentment over an entirely unfair moment. You feel justified in your anger, and you are right, they were wrong, they were unfair. So you hold on to this resentment. You carry it like a weapon you are sharpening, preparing for the day you can finally strike back and make them understand the depth of your pain. You truly believe your anger is a form of punishment against them. But Buddhist wisdom teaches a very different reality. There is a well-known reflection in Buddhist thought. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Buddhism reminds us that anger is not a weapon we wield against our enemies. It is a fire that burns the vessel holding it. We mistake our outrage for power. We think if we stay angry enough, the universe will bend to our will and correct the mistake. But clinging to resentment does not change the past. It only poisons your present. Imagine standing alone in a quiet room. Suddenly, someone throws a burning piece of coal at you. You catch it. You are furious. You stand there, squeezing the hot coal tightly in your fist, waiting for the exact right moment to throw it back at them. But the person who threw it has already walked away. Minutes pass. Hours pass. The room is silent. The only thing happening is that your own hand is burning. You are enduring agonizing pain, believing that somehow holding this fire is teaching them a lesson. How often do we hold the hot coal in our modern lives? You sit at your desk at work, fuming over a colleague who threw you under the bus. You scroll through your phone late at night, feeling a bitter sting because someone who betrayed you seems entirely unaffected. You sit at the dinner table with your family, but your mind is miles away, fighting an invisible war with someone who is currently sleeping soundly. The injustice was real, the pain was real, but the poison you are swallowing today is entirely your own. You are letting the ghost of their bad behavior ruin your quiet evening. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, who is actually suffering right now? Is your resentment changing what happened, or is it only burning away your present joy? Are you willing to sacrifice your peace today to punish someone for yesterday? Pause. Breathe. Look at your own hands. You do not have to forgive the unfair action to drop the coal. Stop tightening your grip on the memory. Let the heat dissipate. Letting go of the anger does not mean you agree with what they did. It simply means you refuse to let them burn you twice. It means you value your own peace more than their punishment. But dropping the coal requires confronting a very uncomfortable truth about why we want to fight back in the first place. And this is where the next truth begins. Because underneath the burning desire for justice, there is usually a quiet voice demanding to be heard. 4. The ego's need for the last word. What if the part of you demanding an apology is not your wounded heart, but your bruised ego? Here is the truth few people want to face. You know the situation is over. You know the argument has ended. The relationship has run its course, or the unfair decision is final. Yet, you cannot let it rest. You feel a desperate, burning urge to send one final message. You replay the conversation, searching for the perfect combination of words that will finally make them see how wrong they are. You want to explain yourself just one more time. Being misunderstood feels entirely unbearable. The thought of them walking away believing they were right while you are left holding the pain makes your blood boil. You believe you are fighting for justice, but often you are simply fighting for the last word. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of our suffering stems from the illusion of the ego. The ego is the story we tell about who we are. It is the part of us that desperately needs to be right, needs to be respected, and needs to be validated when wronged. Buddhism reminds us that the ego is incredibly fragile. It fights fiercely to defend itself against criticism or being ignored. But true peace comes when we realize we do not need to defend our image in someone else's mind. Non-attachment means letting go of the exhausting need to control how others perceive us. Imagine a wide, deep lake in the middle of a silent forest, perfectly reflecting the silver light of the full moon. Suddenly, a heavy branch falls into the water. It creates a massive splash, sending chaotic, jagged ripples across the entire surface. The reflection of the moon completely shatters. If the lake had an ego, it would try to fight the ripples. It would try to aggressively push the water back into place, to prove it is still a perfect mirror. But the lake does nothing. It simply rests. It allows the ripples to expand, soften, and eventually fade. In time, the water becomes perfectly still again, and the moon is reflected once more. The lake did not need to fight to restore its true nature. We often fight the ripples in our modern lives. You try to force a stubborn family member to see your side of the story. You exhaust yourself trying to correct a false narrative. A former friend is spreading about you. You type out a long, highly emotional message, hoping to finally win a hollow victory against someone who is deeply committed to misunderstanding you. You are exhausting your spirit, trying to control a reflection in someone else's muddy water. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, are you trying to heal or are you just trying to win? What are you actually holding on to by demanding they understand your side? Is this need to explain yourself bringing you peace, or feeding your fear of being diminished? Pause, breathe. Stop trying to force the door open. Let them be wrong about you. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. Observe the desperate urge to defend yourself and gently let it pass. You are not powerless when you walk away in silence, because true strength is not found in the volume of your defense. It is found in the quiet confidence of knowing your own truth, without ever needing them to validate it. But accepting this means facing the hardest truth of all about the situation, and this is where the next truth begins. Because sometimes, the only resolution you will ever get is the one you create for yourself. 5. Radical acceptance of the unfairness. What if the hardest step toward peace is admitting that the fairness you are waiting for will never arrive? Here is the truth few people want to face. We are taught from a young age that the world should be fair. Good behavior is rewarded, and bad behavior is punished. So, when a deep injustice happens to you, your mind rejects it. You refuse to accept it. You stand in the wreckage of a broken relationship, an unfair job dismissal, or a sudden betrayal, and you demand a resolution. You think that if you accept what happened, you are somehow saying that it was acceptable. You think moving on means they got away with it. So, you wait. You wait for an apology. You wait for the universe to balance the scales. You wait for a closure that someone else holds the key to. But Buddhism reminds us of a difficult but liberating reality. The world simply is what it is. In Buddhist thought, there is a deep emphasis on seeing reality clearly, without the filter of our expectations. Suffering arises when we demand that reality be different than it is. Acceptance in Buddhism is not approval. It is not saying the injustice was right or that you were not harmed. It is the simple, radical act of acknowledging that it happened, and that no amount of wishing will undo it. You cannot change the past, but you can choose to stop fighting it. Imagine a strong, ancient tree standing in a wide field. One night, a violent, unexpected storm rolls in. The wind howls, and a massive strike of lightning shatters one of the tree's largest, most beautiful branches. It is entirely unfair. The tree did nothing to invite the storm. When the morning comes, the branch lies dead on the ground. If the tree had a human mind, it might spend the entire spring shouting at the sky, demanding that the clouds return to fix the broken wood. It would refuse to grow new leaves until the storm apologized. But the tree does not argue with the sky. It accepts the wound. It draws water from the deep earth, and it uses its energy to grow new branches in an entirely different direction. Think about your own life. How often do you stand in the field, shouting at a storm that has already passed? You replay the unfair treatment at work. You agonize over the friend who walked away without explanation. You wait for someone who betrayed you to suddenly realize your worth. You are demanding that the storm come back and fix what it broke, but the storm is gone. The unfairness happened. And, as long as you refuse to accept the reality of the broken branch, you are preventing yourself from growing in a new direction. Ask yourself, are you confusing acceptance with defeat? What would happen if you stopped demanding the past be different? Is your refusal to accept reality bringing you justice, or is it just keeping you trapped in the moment of your deepest pain? Pause, breathe, stop arguing with what has already happened. Acknowledge the wound. Say quietly to yourself, it was unfair, and it is over. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let the storm pass without becoming the storm. You do not need their apology to begin healing. You only need to accept that the reality you wanted is not the reality you have. But accepting what happened is only the foundation. To truly move forward, you must understand the hidden connection you still maintain with the person who hurt you. And this is where the next truth begins. because you cannot walk away until you realize you are still holding the rope. 6. Cutting the invisible cord of attachment. What if the person who hurt you is no longer holding you back, but you are still holding on to them? Here is the truth few people want to face. You may have taken all the right steps on the outside. You walked away from the toxic environment. You stopped calling them. You removed them from your social media, and you swore you were done with the drama. Physically, they are entirely gone from your life. But mentally, they still live in your head. You wake up having imaginary arguments with them in the shower. You accomplish something great, and your very first thought is hoping they see it and regret losing you. You believe you have moved on because they are out of your sight, but your mind is still heavily chained to their memory. In Buddhist thought, we are often warned about the dangers of attachment. Usually, we think of attachment as clinging to the things we love, our desires, our wealth, our loved ones. But Buddhism reminds us that aversion is just another form of attachment. When you fiercely hate someone, when you obsess over an injustice, when you constantly replay how wrong they were, you are deeply attached to them. You are bound to them by an invisible cord of anger. True non-attachment is not just letting go of what you want, it is also letting go of what you despise. Imagine a brutal, exhausting game of tug-of-war. You are standing in the mud, gripping a thick, rough rope. You are pulling with all your might. Your hands are blistered, your muscles are screaming, and your teeth are clenched. You are determined to pull the person who hurt you into the mud, to make them fall, to win the battle of the past. But what you cannot see through the fog is that the other person walked away a long time ago. They dropped their end of the rope. You are standing in the mud, fighting a ghost. The rope is tied to nothing. The only reason your hands are still bleeding is because you refuse to let go. We play this game of tug-of-war every day in our modern lives. You leave a terrible job, but you spend every dinner complaining about your old boss to your family. You survive a painful breakup, but you secretly monitor their life from afar, waiting to see them fail. You think you are protecting yourself. You think you are standing your ground. But the more you pull on the rope of resentment, the more power you give them over your present life. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, are you still pulling the rope? Who are you fighting in your mind when the room is entirely quiet? Is your fierce grip on the past actually hurting them, or is it only giving you blisters? Pause. Breathe. You do not have to win the game. You just have to stop playing. Feel the tension in your mind. Now, imagine opening your hands and letting the heavy rope fall into the dirt. Walk away. You cannot heal a wound while you are still constantly touching it. Dropping the invisible cord does not mean you are weak. It means you are finally choosing your own freedom. But letting the rope fall often feels like a betrayal of your own pain, as if you are letting them off the hook. And this is where the next truth begins. Because we must completely redefine what it means to forgive, not as a gift to them, but as a shield for yourself. 7. Forgiveness as an act of self-preservation. What if forgiveness has absolutely nothing to do with the person who broke your trust? Here is the truth few people want to face. When we hear the word forgiveness, we often feel a sharp surge of resistance. We think that if we forgive someone who was incredibly unfair to us, we are letting them off the hook. We believe forgiveness is a gift we give to the wrongdoer, a way of saying that what they did was acceptable. So, we build a heavy fortress of resentment. We hold on to our anger like a shield, believing that refusing to forgive is the ultimate form of self-respect. You carry the memory of their betrayal everywhere you go, keeping score in your mind, determined never to let them forget the pain they caused. But Buddhism teaches a very different reality. In Buddhist thought, forgiveness is not a pardon, it is an act of deep compassion for yourself. Buddhism reminds us that holding on to a grievance is like tying a heavy weight to your own spirit. As long as you harbor hatred, you remain entirely connected to the source of your pain. Forgiveness, therefore, is not about the other person at all. It is the conscious, quiet decision to stop allowing their past actions to dictate your present emotional state. It is an act of ultimate self-preservation. Imagine you are trapped in a dark, cold room. The person who wronged you forcefully locks the heavy wooden door from the outside, walks away, and takes the key. For years, you stand in the dark, pounding your fists against the wood until your hands ache. You scream into the silence, demanding that they come back, look you in the eye, and open the door. You are entirely focused on them. But all along, on the opposite wall, there is a wide open window, letting in the warm light of the sun. Forgiveness is simply stopping the useless pounding on the locked door. It is turning around, feeling the warmth on your face, and climbing out the window to walk into the open field. Climbing out of the window does not mean the person was right to lock you in. It does not mean you will ever trust them with a key again. It simply means you refuse to spend the rest of your life in the dark just to prove a point. How often do we stand in the dark in our modern lives? You hold a deep grudge against a family member for a slight that happened years ago, ruining your own peace at every gathering. You replay an unfair dismissal at work, letting the bitterness sour the new opportunities right in front of you. You are so focused on the locked door of an apology, you will never receive that you are missing the open window of your own present life. Ask yourself, are you waiting for them to unlock the door? Is your refusal to forgive actually hurting them, or is it only keeping you trapped in the dark? What would happen if you simply turned around and walked out? Pause, breathe. You do not have to absolve their terrible actions. You do not even have to speak to them again, but you must release their hold on your mind. Stop pounding on the wood. Let the resentment rise, and then let it pass without following it. Because true strength is not found in holding a grudge forever. It is found in having the immense courage to walk away from it entirely. But stepping out of the dark room requires you to realize the profound power you have always possessed. And this is where the next truth begins. Because once you stop pouring your energy into the past, you finally have the quiet space to reclaim your present. 8. Finding your quiet strength. What if the greatest power you possess is the ability to remain entirely still while someone else is trying to pull you into their storm? Here is the truth. We are deeply conditioned to believe that strength is loud. We think strength looks like winning the argument, proving our point, or delivering the perfect, crushing response. When someone treats us unfairly, we feel an intense, burning pressure to defend ourselves. We think that if we do not fight back, if we do not match their energy, we are showing weakness. We mistake our silence for submission, and so we exhaust ourselves, constantly standing on the battlefield, swinging at every insult, defending our honor against people who are committed to misunderstanding us. But Buddhist wisdom teaches a very different kind of power. In Buddhist thought, true strength is not found in the volume of your reaction, but in the depth of your stillness. It is the practice of inner balance. Buddhism reminds us that when you react in anger, you are allowing the other person to dictate your internal emotional state. You are handing them the absolute control over your peace. Quiet strength is the profound realization that you do not have to participate in every chaotic energy that approaches you. Non-reaction is not surrender. It is the ultimate mastery of the mind. Imagine the vast open ocean. On the surface, the weather is completely unpredictable. A violent storm can suddenly rage. The wind howls, lightning strikes, and massive waves crash against each other in total chaos. The surface is turbulent and wild. But if you were to dive beneath those waves, sinking deeper and deeper, the chaos completely disappears. At the bottom of the ocean, the water is entirely still. It is silent. It is heavy, vast, and completely undisturbed. The deep ocean does not rise up to fight the storm above. It simply remains rooted in its own immense, quiet depth, until the storm eventually exhausts itself and passes. We face these storms constantly in our modern lives. You receive a passive-aggressive message from a relative meant to provoke you. You see someone who betrayed you, trying to bait you into a reaction. A co-worker tries to drag you into a bitter, unnecessary conflict. Your immediate instinct is to rush to the surface and fight the waves. You want to match their chaos, but when you do, you lose your depth, you lose your peace. You become just another crashing wave in their temporary storm. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, how often do you hand over your peace to someone else's poor behavior? Are you sacrificing your own quiet depth just to prove a point on the chaotic surface? What would happen if you simply let them rage while you remained entirely still? Pause, breathe, feel the solid ground beneath you. When the urge to react rises, observe it as a passing cloud without grabbing onto it. You do not have to absorb their chaos. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let them be loud, while you choose the profound power of silence. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You can stand firmly in your own truth without ever needing to shout it. But holding this quiet space requires one final shift in how you view the heavy weight you have been carrying. And this is where the final truth begins, because eventually the storm will run out of rain, and you must decide what to do with the quiet that follows. 9. Letting the storm pass. What if the closure you have been desperately waiting for has been inside of you all along? At the beginning of this journey, we spoke about that unfair moment you keep replaying in the dark, the deep, heavy sting of an injustice that refuses to heal because someone else walked away without making it right. You wanted the scales to balance. You wanted the last word. You carried the heavy stone, swallowed the poison of resentment, and held tightly to the rope, believing that if you pulled hard enough, you could force the past to change. You thought your anger was protecting you from being hurt again, but now you know the truth. The universe does not require your exhaustion to balance the scales. The cage door is already open, and the only thing keeping you inside is your demand for an apology you may never receive. Letting go of this unresolved pain is not about surrendering to the person who hurt you. It is about returning to yourself. It is about looking at the heavy stone in your hands and realizing you do not have to carry it for another single step. You do not have to drink the poison just to prove how much you were hurt. You do not have to stand in the dark, pounding on a locked door, when the window of your own life is wide open, inviting you to step into the sun. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that everything is impermanent. The unfairness happened, yes. The pain was real, yes. But that exact moment is over. It is gone. Like a fierce storm that tore a branch from a strong tree, the event has passed. The winds have died down. You are standing in the quiet aftermath. You have survived the storm. Now, you must gently refuse to keep inviting the wind back into your mind. Think about your own life right now. Look closely at the wound you have been protecting so fiercely. Ask yourself, are you finally ready to drop the rope? Are you ready to let the muddy waters settle so you can see your true reflection again? You no longer need to be the crashing wave on the chaotic surface. You can choose to sink deep into the quiet, still ocean of your own inner peace. You can allow them to be wrong about you. You can allow the past to remain entirely imperfect. Pause, breathe, feel the quiet strength that has always lived inside of you. You do not need their validation to know your worth. You do not need their regret to begin your healing. Do your part, then release the outcome. Embrace the radical acceptance of what is, and trust that the space you clear by letting go of resentment will be filled with a profound, unshakable peace. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.